Our next guest is Rob DeLuca of the band Spread Eagle. Spread Eagle burst onto the scene in 1990 with their debut album, Spread Eagle. It was soon followed up by Open to the Public, when the band then went on hiatus. In 2019, they reformed and released the classic album Subway to the Stars. Rob DeLuca, welcome to the Rock House. How are you, mate?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. So yeah, we actually reformed in '06, but
Yes,
we just
did.
we just did gigs for a while. We weren't really we didn't have a lot of opportunities for a few years, so we were just doing some local gigs around the East Coast, and then things started to pick up towards the end. Around 2016, things started to pick up. So
Awesome. You started your life though in Boston, is that right?
no, I was born in Wilmington, Delaware, which is about I'm going to just guess around 7 hours driving south of that. And
Okay.
then I moved to Boston to go to school, and then I moved to New York. I lived in Jersey for a little bit there, but not much. But
Yeah.
yeah, I lived in Boston for a few years, going to school and kicking
Nice.
around in bands. And
Nice.
so,
Cover bands or original bands, mate?
original. Yeah,
Awesome.
nothing great, but I met Paul DiBartolo and Tommy Gallo, and that morphed into Spread Eagle. So it was very fruitful. It just needed to take some time to become fruitful.
Yeah. You're right. You did move over to New York after you met with Ray West, is that right?
Yeah. Well, we moved to New York, and we met Ray very shortly after. Paul had met Ray, but we got Ray in the band just after we moved to New York, after Tommy and I moved to New York, and got him in the band, and got signed quickly, luckily. And
You did. I understand you haven't even did any live gigs as a band.
That's all really
Signed by MCA Records, is that right?
that's really true. That whole story. It's like we booked. I was actually going to be the singer originally, but I wasn't good enough, So I moved down. I can sing, but I can't sing like Ray, nowhere near that. But I can hold a tune, So Paul and Tommy and I, Tommy's was the drummer. We had been playing together for years, and we didn't have the right singer. And then Paul took off and moved to New York, and Tommy and I moved down, and I tried to do some singing, and it wasn't working out. So I went back to bass, which is what I was doing, previously. And Paul had known Ray because Paul moved here a few months before we did to New York.
Okay.
And we got Ray as soon as I wasn't working out on the vocals, which was very short-lived, just trying it out from one night. I was like, so I'm not going to turn into this big, headline. It probably lasted one night, that dream, but it was all good. Things happen for a reason, and Ray was not in our band. I don't think he was interested in being in our band, but when he heard what we had, he helped us kind of do some singing on it. And then when he heard what it sounded like with him on it, he wanted in. And so that's the whole story. So, but we had booked. So at that point, we booked a few gigs to kind of get ready, and we had some people come down, give their opinions, and we started getting offers for record deals. So we canceled the gigs, went right into recording. So that's all really true. It's crazy,
Wow. I mean, back in those days,
we had been working so hard at the goal of getting a record deal for so many years. Like, we were very focused. We rehearsed minimum 5, probably 6 times a week for years. I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
In Boston and in New York. Sometimes we would do a rhythm section, drums and bass rehearsal in the day, and a full band rehearsal at night. Like, we were full on, and we'd be out all night drinking and promoting the band. So it's not like, that we had this gift, we just needed Ray, we needed that sound of that voice, and what he added to it, which was a lot,
Yeah, most definitely. I'm really amazed though that you got signed straight away without any gigs. That was almost unheard of days. How did MCA Records that signed you come to find you?
Well, we were rehearsing in a basement space, about maybe 15 by 15, 12 by 12 feet. And
pretty tight.
And yeah, it was very tight. And because it wasn't a showcase room, it was a rehearsal room, and we are trying to get the cheapest room we can because we didn't know that any of this was going to happen, and we were broke.
Yeah.
So our manager knew some people in the industry, and he invited them down to give us critiques. So it just kind of pushed us along quicker. And the first person who came down, I think it was like Jive RCA Records or something, some little label. And they were really interested. They didn't offer us a deal, but they were really interested. And we were like, wow, this is a lot better than we expected. And then the second day, MCA came down and they said, we want to sign you. As soon as we got done playing, they said, we want to sign you. We only had about 5 songs written.
Wow.
So they said, we want to sign you. And then New York, even though it's a huge city, it's a small scene. And even though it was a very vibrant scene, it was a small scene. And word got out after MCA gave us an offer. And then people were calling this little studio, hey, we heard there's a band called Spread Eagle. We want to come down and see them. Or when are they rehearsing? So then they all started coming. It was like every day they were coming.
Wow.
It was intense.
What an amazing
Just
time.
moving down. We'd only been in New York for like 3 to 4 months after trying to get signed for years up in Boston.
Yeah.
Years and everything. Flying to New York, doing showcases, flying people up there. Like, we just weren't good enough up there.
Yeah.
We didn't have Ray.
So after you signed with MCA, how long was it before you hit the studio?
Pretty quickly. We were writing songs in the studio pretty quickly. I don't really remember, but I'm going to say 2 to 3 months later.
Wow.
We were in the studio. And then we were, that was like March of 89 that we got signed, and roughly, and our album was out in June of
1990, yeah. And a classic debut album as well. Got the CD liner there, mate. It was I discovered it. I brought the CD at the time over here in Australia. An Australian magazine called Metal Edge rated it as in the top 5 debut albums of all time.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that. I never knew that because I didn't know there was a Metal Edge in Australia. I know there was one in New York City.
Okay. Yeah, but the Australian version, mate, top 5, and I brought it based on that, and I wasn't disappointed either. It was also rated as in the top 20 of the glam albums of all time by Uber Rock in the UK.
Yeah.
Would you describe the sound of that debut album as glam metal, mate?
No, I wouldn't. But I'd say we had a couple songs that were somewhat glam metal.
Yeah.
Song Spread Eagle, the song Hot Sex.
Yep.
Everything else was it shared that attitude and nastiness, but it was a little more metal.
Yeah, definitely.
The rest of the album, I feel,
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely.
But, yeah, so not really glam metal, but we were just happy to be. Anyone was talking about us, That was fine.
Well, the album opened up with one of the most metal tracks at the time, Broken City, with the guitars just come out and hit you. But one song in particular, which I'm keen to get your insight on, Through These Eyes, with words like, God in heaven, don't waste your time or tears on me, because I'm too far gone. I'm not singing, I'm like you, I'm not a vocalist. What was the inspiration behind Through These Eyes?
I think it was just being thrown into the Lower East Side of New York City, all living together, not really having anything except a dream, which sounds, kind of cheesy and like, but the truth is that all we had was that dream, and you believe it's going to happen, and we were working every day and night on it, but what if it doesn't, what if you're not, choosing the right path? What if you want to make it in this band, but certain decisions you're making are the wrong decisions for that band? It's like, when you're in your early 20s, it's a really confusing time, And we didn't have a dime to our name. We were living in squalor, There was real squalor all around us. When you see the video for Switchblade Serenade, that's our neighborhood, That's not.
Oh wow.
You know, yeah, that's all filmed within 3 blocks of our apartment, that whole video. So it was a really burned out. You know, now you wouldn't think that. Now New York is so gentrified. East Village of New York City and all of Manhattan is so gentrified. But back then, the East Village probably had I'm going to say 35 to 40% vacancy rate of just burned out crack buildings and
Wow.
broken down buildings and, you know, empty lots. Now there's probably a 1% vacancy rate, you know, I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3% maybe. But then it was like, you know, half the neighborhood was just like crack dens. And so I think that all seeps into your, you know, you write what's around you, you know, and it all seeps. So
definitely. Yeah.
If it's, you know, what you always go back and look at your youth and you glamorize it, but there were tough times. There were really tough times. Even when things were going well at MCA for a brief period, you know, it was still hard. And MCA was our label, Universal, and those good times didn't last very long. You know, even though it was still hard, we had a little bit of good times, and they didn't last very long.
Yeah, yeah. You move over to 1993 with the release of Open to the Public. There you go. Oh, not a very good visual there, but anyway. The sound of the record was much different. How did you approach this record compared to the first?
Well, I'm plugging in my computer as I answer that question. Well, obviously, it's a different sound that I will take as much responsibility for as anyone. You know, it was, you know, we all had an opinion, and it definitely changed quite a bit from our street metal sound. Some of it, like I'd say half the album is really ripping and half the album isn't. And I think that was allowed to happen. That was enabled by us thinking we're going to be the biggest band in the world and releasing this record that people are just like, oh my, you know, like they're like this, you know, about that record. And then being told when we were in California, we were out in Hollywood for like a month or 6 weeks or something, just working the scene out there and getting press and getting known because our label was there. And, you know, the scene that was the nucleus of the 80s metal scene, of course. So we wanted to be known there. And then we got told, you know, this record's done. You got to come home and write a new one. And we were like, what? You know, we thought we'd be touring that record for another year, like Guns N' Roses had. It took them a year to break their record, you know, and other bands, you know, had that liberty of time. And, you know, like after about 6 months, they told us that. So it didn't help our mental health as far as being really in control of knowing where we're going and how to get there. All of a sudden, we were questioning a lot of things. We had people talking in our ears, managers, label, talking in each other's ears, talking in our ears about, you know, you need a hit song to utilize the MCA machine, you know, the universal machine, this and that. And in hindsight, and again, I'm as much to blame as anyone, but in hindsight, I think it was a mistake to lose to lose so much nastiness from first record to the second record. However, Paul DiBartolo's writing is so advanced. It's hard to you know, not be blown away by what he was coming up with, because it's such a musical album. It's so incredibly musical.
It is.
It really is.
And fantastic tracks on it. And in fact, the sound of the album still stands up today. You know, that some records age, but this record is still a classic. You know, it opens up with Devil's Road, Revolution Maker. So the groove and the feel is really strong within that album. Probably, you know, a lot different to the bombardment that you get with the first album, but there are
Yeah.
still great musical tracks on there.
Yeah, I think Revolution Maker is the most badass spread eagle riff out of all three albums, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And some fans came along with us on that second record, but some were disappointed that we lost some of the nastiness, you know. And but the thing that makes me proud of it and not and still believe in that album is the quality of the musicianship and the songs, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
If we had changed direction somewhat and it wasn't good songwriting, it would be, you know, it would be disappointing to look back on it. But, you know, we just tried something. We lost some fans along the way, you know, we gained some others.
Yeah. The band went on hiatus at this time. The musical landscape had changed dramatically from your first album to the release of the second album when grunge hit the world. What was the reason behind taking a break from the band after the release of this?
Just those obvious things that you mentioned. It was really hard to get any kind of love, you know, like when grunge came out and people were like, "You were a hair metal band. You're the plague," you know. It was tough to go through that. Not the grunge music wasn't tough to go through. There was some fantastic music and some bad music, but there was some fantastic grunge bands. But it's just the public's reaction to style, you know, that you were the old style and you're so horrible, even though a month ago you were the shit. Right now you're so horrible. That was tough for us. And so that, and there was some drug abuse going on, and Ray quit the band, and that Tommy had already left, come back, and left again. Ray quit the band, and we were going to try to keep going, but Paul quit the band, and you know, it was done. So, and you know, maybe we needed that to take a break from it. Maybe we would have just been, it would have broken our hearts even more to try during that time when no one wanted to really hear that style of music. If you remember, at the time, Motley were playing theaters. Guns N' Roses.
They were.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses went from being the coolest band in the world to
the most hated.
Well, yeah, like Kurt Cobain was saying bad things about them. You know, it was a really weird time.
Yeah.
So we needed a break.
You went on the break, and then fast forward. You mentioned in 2006 the reunion tour happened. What led to you guys chatting again and wanting to go out on the road?
Well, Ray and I, the thing about Spread Eagle is the band, all versions. We've never fought. You know, if you're brothers, you might disagree, and you know, but we always and still do get along really well with the current band members, former band members. We were in it together, and we really respected each other, and so there was never anything like that. Like, you know, screw you, you know, I'm done, I'm out of here. Like I said, it was just with grunge and the drugs and people quitting, it was just, we had to take a break. But Ray and I had always been in touch, and Tommy was in Massachusetts, Paul was in New York, but he was going back and forth to India, I believe, where he currently lives.
Yep.
And Ray and I were still on the scene in New York City, and we talk, we'd run into each other. We weren't hanging out or anything, but if we saw each other, it was great thing. And we were totally 100% cool with each other. But I don't think either of us were calling the other guy to do it again, you know. But I was bartending in the East Village, and there was a guy named Dave Harrington, who was a local customer of mine, a regular in the bar. And he managed Green Street Studios, where we mixed the debut album. And we did some tracking there also. But Green Street was in Soho, just 15 blocks away from where I bartended. And he would always come in, you got to get Spread Eagle back together. I'm like, please, you know, because I was trying to reinvent myself. And, you know, I was always in a band trying to, in an original band, trying to succeed. I was in bands that had gotten like indie deals and development deals, but never that big record deal like Spread Eagle got. And I was always trying. Still, years later, this is now we're talking like 10 years after we broke up, pretty much. And Ray and I, as I said, we're playing around New York City scene all the time.
Yep.
So this guy's like, Dave Harrington was like, you got to put it back together again. And I'm like, nah. And he snuck up into the DJ booth one night and he put in Broken City and turned it so loud. Awesome. And I was bartending and I didn't know what it was because I hadn't listened to it in years,
Oh, wow.
I probably hadn't heard it, and I'm just guessing, maybe 4 or 5 years. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And it took probably like 20 seconds to figure out what it was.
Oh, no.
And when I heard that, the next day I called Ray, I said, what do you think? And he's like, let's do it. So it was Dave Harrington who really got it back together.
Fantastic. It would have been an amazing feeling 20 seconds in the song when you worked it out to go, that's me.
It kind of scared me, like, wow, because I couldn't enjoy it because it brought all these feelings of like,
okay,
maybe I should do, like, should I, oh my God, like, were we that good? Like, were we really that good? And is it better than what I'm doing now? Like, it was just a rush of emotions. And right away I knew I had to call Ray. So
yeah, I
called Ray the next day and he was like, sure, man, let's do it.
That's awesome. So you hit the road. What was the reaction when you hit the road and toured the US?
Am I still coming in okay? I just want to check because I just got an
perfect
notification. Well, when we first started, we didn't have Paul or Tommy.
Yeah.
We still don't have Paul or Tommy. They were gone. Tommy, I couldn't get a hold of him. He was off the grid. Paul didn't want to do it. And so we got other people who were really cool and good musicians, but and they did a good job of representing the songs and representing, who we were as our spirit, what our spirit's supposed to be. But it wasn't really the same. And so it took a little while. But finally, when we got Rick and Zeev, Rick DeLuca and Zeev Shalev, then it really felt like Spread Eagle again. And then we started thinking different. Like, if it feels like this, which is the way it felt, in general, in the beginning, then what more should we do? Should we write a few songs? Should we track a few songs? So things progressed as it sounded like Spread Eagle again. Then things started to progress.
Yeah. You took the band.
But the reactions were good, to answer your question. People missed it, and the grunge insanity had come and gone, and
you took the band over to Europe in 2017 as well. Was it a similar reaction to fans over in Europe?
Oh, it was great. It was people crying. It was people crying in front of us. It was awesome. You got grown men crying. I think you're doing something either really right or really wrong, So I'm still not sure which one it was, though.
If the band make it to Australia, mate, I will be that person up the front crying as well.
And you'll be on the guest list, so hopefully we will.
2018, your dreams were relived by signing with Frontier Records a year later. Another classic album, can we see that? Subway to the Stars was released. Those visuals just aren't working, but anyway, we get the idea. How was that recording process? You mentioned your brother Rick was on drums, Sid guitars. How
cousin Rick.
Approach the album?
Well, it's the one I'm the most proud of because when you take a break and you get away from something, there's always that voice in your head, can you do it again? Like, we proved we could do shows, but shows is a completely different animal,
Yeah.
So we know we can go in a studio and record, but can we record and have our fans like it and think it makes sense with our catalog and, get a strong visceral reaction out of them like the other albums, especially the first album got, So there's all those voices in your head, but you got to just get up on that horse and do it, you know? So it's the one I'm most proud of because we didn't have a huge label and management behind us and a booking agent behind us and all that. It was basically just the four of us. And so I mean, you know, and we got a little bit of money from Frontiers and we went in the studio and did it, but it was a lot of sweat and a lot of persistence, and because of all those obstacles and challenges, it's the one I'm most proud of. And the reviews were the best of the three, surprisingly. I don't know if it was, I think it was in Australia. Someone said it was the best comeback album of the century. You know, at the time that was 19 years they were talking about, you know, best comeback album of the century, you know, so that's talking about they thought it was the best comeback album in 19 years that they've heard. So we were getting a lot of really great press from it, and it's made us feel really good, and it's energized us again. It's made us confident about moving forward to a fourth album, which we've written a bunch of songs for, and we've demoed a bunch of things for. Yeah, it's going to be a killer album. You know, we've updated our gear. We got some more ripping guitars and amps, and we're fully back now. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. When can we expect to see the fourth album?
I'm going to say 2023. I'm not sure when, but
really looking forward to that then.
Yeah, it'll be if you like the first one and the third one, you'll definitely like it. Or if you like all three of them, you'll definitely like it.
Yeah,
it's going to be some serious guitar playing on it. Serious, some serious riffage.
So speaking of serious riffage, Subway to the Stars has some great tracks on there itself. Opens up with the title track, Subway to the Stars. Second track, 29th of February. A really interesting track, and I've tried to decipher the words in there quite a bit. What's the meaning behind the 29th of February?
Well, that's a really cool song that Rob DeLuca wrote most of the music for, our drummer. Yeah. He also plays instruments. I think the lyrics are just a reminder that everything is temporary.
Yeah.
Nothing is permanent. Don't take too much stock in believing that things will last. Not really in a negative way, just saying, you know, we're all permanent, very, very permanent. So it's just kind of a snapshot of that statement.
The album continues. Another favorite of mine, Little Serpentina, has a very different, edgier sound to it. It's almost like you feel like you're walking through a graveyard when you're listening to this song. What was the meaning behind that one?
Well, that one, I believe, is about getting press, even though you would probably never think of it. It doesn't. Now, just keep in mind, these are some thoughts of mine, but if you or anyone else think the songs are about something else, they are, because the lyrics that we write aren't like, you know, we went to the store, we walked back from the store, we went to the bar, you know, like there's only one way to interpret it. You know, our lyrics are really open. They can be interpreted in a lot of different ways on purpose. And that to me means what I'm thinking at the moment might not really be what this is about. So it's something that's happening at the moment is affecting me. But so I'm just saying things that these songs may be about, not what they are about. So answering your question, Little Serpentina may be about getting pressed, because there's some things there that I remember at the time were in my head about getting press, and I can relate some of the lines to that, you know, to that. But I do remember playing the chorus in my bathroom, where I would write a lot of stuff, because it's, you know, tiles. It was a little tiny bathroom in Manhattan, and singing them words and thinking, this is so interesting. And I don't think anyone else in the world would write these chords or this bass. I write on bass. This bass line which dictated the chords. And this vocal melody and these words, you know, just talking about the chorus. And I was so I was like giddy. I was like laughing, like this is so weird and cool, you know. I remember that feeling, you know. So I think it's an interesting song. It's really cool. And again, I think Spread Eagle's a band. We have our own thing. Like we do things. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not trying to, but we do things a little different than everyone else, and that's such a cool thing. And I think that's one of the reasons our fans have stuck by us all these years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good analogy, because Spread Eagle just don't sound like any other band around, right?
You know, like we were in that glam umbrella, but then we were like, thrash guys would be like, "You guys aren't glam. This is totally heavy. You know, this is so heavy." Where thrash guys would be coming to our shows, but then we would get all these girls to come to the shows, and we're just, you know, we're like a square peg. Maybe that hurt us. I don't know, but we are what we are. You know.
Yeah. When I was doing my research, I actually was surprised that you made the top 20 glam records of all time. So yeah, I like the analogy that you've got on your website, the East Coast street metal, and I think that's more appropriate.
I do too. I agree. Thanks.
So your fondest memory of Subway to the Stars? The album is now, you know, 2 or 3 years old. A lot of the songs still are on your set list in the band today. What's your proudest moment?
Well, just as I said earlier, getting it done against the odds, but probably the fact that Ray had his favorite experience recording vocals in the studio on that album. He said that was the easiest album he ever had to make. And, you know, there's great vocals on there. It's not like, you know, we weren't going for it, but, you know, I produce it in a different way than Ray's been produced in the past. And I trust him, and I work with him. I don't ride him or, you know, in a negative way or break him down, you know, and try to rebuild him, you know, like a Marine, you know, or something. And because of that, you know, we got like most of the record done very, very quickly, talking about vocals. Actually everything, but talking about vocals. And then the little remaining parts that were difficult that, you know, maybe we spent a little extra time on them, but we had so much accomplished with a good vibe and morale that it was okay to then have some challenging spots, you know. I think Ray felt like in the past, I feel like he felt like everything was difficult, you know, and everything was a fight in the studio for him and people who were in the studio with him. Okay. So, I mean, he would be the best to describe his feelings, but he said certain things like that where he's had really difficult times in the studio. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, his voice just comes across brilliantly out of this album, and in fact the other 2 albums as well.
Yeah.
We talk Spread Eagle having their own unique sound. I think a lot of that is due to Ray's voice. It's brilliant.
Absolutely. Ray is just walking style, both, you know, vocally and visually, and how he performs. He's not like anyone else. Everyone else had like a blonde-haired front man, tall blonde-haired front man. You know, we had a little Puerto Rican guy, you know, and, you know, and we were fine with that. We, you know, we weren't like anyone else, you know, we really weren't. But again, about getting back to what you just said, like, yeah, the style of his voice, like just listen to the song Solitaire, you know, where he croons, you know, and, you know, the last song we do all this riffing, and then the last song just ends with this breath of fresh air and Ray's crooning, and then the character of the album gets off the subway and walks out of the subway, because the album is a concept album of a subway ride, and so, you know, Ray croons that song, and you know, it's just so beautiful. Like he sounds like him, like himself, but he sounds almost like a Greg Allman of the Allman Brothers band to me, you know, on that song. And something I never mentioned, I'm, I'm Italian American, and my father's from Italy. And my grandfather came to America to build the subway in New York City.
All
That's
right.
why I'm here. Yeah, he got hired to come here to build that. He was a stonemason,
Okay.
and after a couple of years of coming back and forth and working, he had enough money to bring my father, my uncle, and my grandmother over to the East Coast through Ellis Island.
Yeah.
So the subway, it's got a lot of meaning for us, and also living in Manhattan, you're on the subway almost every day.
Okay.
Multiple times, often.
Rob, you mentioned that you gave up your dreams of becoming a vocalist. I don't think that's exactly true. I'm going to throw a name at you, and I'm interested in your reaction. The band Of Earth.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Of Earth is something I do when I have time on the side, and it's a complete departure. It's kind of like very slow, non-riffy pop prog, like slow prog, like Pink Floyd or Genesis, not like riffy prog. And I sing and play bass, and it means a lot to me. I haven't been as active on it in the last few years, just because Spread Eagle I'm trying to break Spread Eagle, and it's hard to break one more than one band at a time. But it means a lot to me. We have 2 albums out. You can stream them, you can download them for free on Bandcamp, and it's with a great guitar player named Paul Casanova. Really fantastic guitar player, singer he is. And Rick DeLuca played drums on one of the albums, and yeah, some other guys who are fantastic. It's really cool stuff. Very intense. The lyrics are very intense, and the melodies are really haunting.
And I'm going to throw another name at you, UFO.
Yeah, UFO. Luckily, I got to play in a band that I saw when I was in high school.
Was UFO heavy on your playlist back in the day?
In high school, yeah. It's the only band I played with that I was a fan of. I mean, by the time Skid Row were out, I was 100% focused on Spread Eagle. I couldn't even, focus on any other bands. I heard them all the time on MTV, but like the deep album cuts of theirs, I didn't even know, because I was so blinders on about getting Spread Eagle to succeed. But UFO was the band I was really into, and yeah, it's been a great run, 14 years. But they are retiring in November of this year.
Wow.
In Athens, Greece. So that's it. So
how do you handle the double duty of playing in UFO? You also play with Sebastian Bach, as well as reinvigorating Spread Eagle. That's a lot on your plate.
It's hard. It's definitely hard. That's why I was saying it's that's why Of Earth is over here at the moment. But I will bring it back at some point. But it's tough. It's tough. I just have to cross my fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But now that UFO is retiring, it's bittersweet. It's really sad because of all these great shows and great years of playing those incredible songs. But it'll, to look at it on a bright side, it'll give Spread Eagle more time, and I can have a clearer view of the calendar to book stuff,
Awesome. Including a tour to Australia, I hope.
Yeah, I hope so.
I
hope so.
Rob, you've seen a lot of changes in the music industry. What has been the biggest change from when you first recorded in 1990 to today?
Well, the biggest change was the death of music sales. We had cassettes when I was a kid. Well, no, albums when I was a kid, vinyl, and then cassettes, CDs, and probably more than half of a band's income was on selling their music. And it can take a year to make a record, especially like backtracking a little bit to Subway to the Stars. I didn't do that record the new way, where it's just I'll just phone it in, just send me your tracks, do it over the internet, Does, get it sounding as good as you can. No one's going to buy it anyway. No one buys music anymore. We'll just do, if we have to do MIDI or something, that's fine. If the studio isn't a real studio, as long as you get like decent signal, we'll try to fix it in the mix. We didn't do any of that. We did it in a real studio. We spent more than our recording budget on tracking it and mastering it. Because an album to us is something that lasts a lifetime. And I also had that feeling because we're still getting noticed because of Switchblade Serenade, a song we recorded 30 years ago, So for us, music lasts forever. So when we do a record, we do it for real, no matter how much it costs, no matter how long it takes. So back to your question, we spent a lot of time on Subway to Stars, and most people don't do that anymore because there just isn't the financial return on putting out albums. So I would say that is the biggest change in the music industry now. The second biggest change, I would say, is almost as disappointing. It's how all bands are playing. So many bands are playing to backing tracks. I don't understand it. I've never been in a band that's done it. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to know how to do it, and I never will do it. So it just perplexes me because it's one thing when you have a band of guys in their 70s and they're looking towards retiring. But then there's so many bands that are 21 years old that do it. And it's like this industry standard of young bands. It just confuses me. And it really makes it harder for that band to get great. It makes it harder for that band to learn to rearrange songs, because an album and a live show are completely different animals. And you have to approach the live show very differently than a record. We Spread Eagle have one guitar player, and as I said, we're never going to run tracks. We're never going to have rhythm section, rhythm guitar tracks, which a lot of bands do. We're never going to have them running in the background. So a guitar player might have to rethink their part, which is fine. That's one of the beauties and the dangers of rock and roll, of living, breathing rock and roll.
Yeah.
You do things differently. It forces you to practice your vocals more. Spread Eagle, all four of us sing, so we have to pull it off live, and sometimes we have to change part. Well, maybe you should sing this part. Maybe I should sing that part. It's all about arranging. So that would be the second biggest change in the music industry to me is how bands use backing tracks, and the fans don't realize it, which is a shame. They're paying for something that they don't even know that they're watching a band lip sync.
Yeah. It is a sad state of affairs, particularly when, as you pointed out, the young bands are doing it as well. Rob, one final question. I know you're a busy man with everything that's going on in life, but if we can just finish up with one final question. What's the greatest advice you can give to an aspiring musician today?
I would say practice on your own to a metronome, because it will develop your inner clock, which will in turn make you groove more. Even though a metronome is very rigid, you learn how to do this to it. But you have to learn how to play like this before you can go like this in a way that sounds good. So practice every day to a metronome on your own, every single day. And I'd say believe in yourself, because you're going to have to believe in yourself for a lot of years before the powers that be start believing in you. People who can make your career happen. They don't come around for quite a while, so you really need to learn to believe in yourself and be thick-skinned and resilient, because there's a lot of years of that. And then the third thing I'd say is don't use backing tracks, because it will definitely stunt your growth. Because a lot of things you use backing tracks for, a lot of those deficiencies you will develop if you don't use backing tracks. And then you'll be this incredible live band that can, like when you saw Prince play, that guy could do everything, you know, like he's an extreme example, but
Yeah.
you know, like you have to aspire to be able to just be living, breathing music, you know, and it just flows through you. And that doesn't happen when you're running backing tracks and you're not flexing that muscle. So those are my words of advice. And don't do it for fame or money, because this isn't the industry for that. You're probably not going to reach those things. You know?
Do it for love.
Do it for love.
Yeah.
The love of music, the love of creation.
You have got so much on. Subway to the Stars, just a fantastic album, as are the self-titled album and Open to the Public as well. Any plans to put these on vinyl?
Not at the moment, but the first one was released on vinyl. The third one was supposed to be released on vinyl. We have the artwork done for it, but it wasn't. But in the future, I'd like to. I really would. But there's no immediate plans. Not in the next year or two. No.
Okay. So the next thing we look forward to is the album next year, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Album number 4.
Fantastic. Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure. On behalf of the Rock House, thank you so much for your time and for the wonderful insight into what is Spread Eagle. That's been fantastic.
Place.
Yeah.
And I want to say again, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Australia. I've been there many times, and some of the best rock and roll fans in the world are there. So I love it there, and we can't wait to play for you.
Awesome. Look forward to it, Rob. Take care, mate. All the best.
Bye.